The world at the time of Jesus was a cruel and difficult place. We heard that today in today's gospel when Jesus tells the story of the Good Samaritan. The man going from Jerusalem to Jericho was assaulted and left for dead. The priest and the Levite passed by, but the Samaritan was the one that helped and even saved the man's life because he was, as Jesus says, moved with compassion at the sight. Nearly 2,000 years later, we're living in a world that is perhaps no less or maybe even more a cruel and difficult place. We've been living through some difficult times, haven't we? 2.5 years of the pandemic and the massacre of 10 people in a supermarket just a few miles down the road from here, 19 children and 2 teachers in an elementary school in Texas, and this past week, people celebrating the 4th of July at a parade outside Chicago. All of this has worn us down. Alongside these events, the rulings of the Supreme Court in the last few weeks, legalizing concealed weapons, laying the groundwork for outlawing abortions, and allowing for prayers in public schools, have exacerbated the growing tensions in an already deeply divided country, and further illustrate the polarization in America on a range of issues, including immigration, race, and voting rights. I'd like to spend just a few minutes with you today reflecting on how we as Catholics can respond to these critical issues. Now, there are strong opinions on both sides of the Supreme Court's decision to end constitutional protections for abortions that were in place for nearly 50 years. While affirming the Church's teaching that human life begins at the moment of conception, Cardinal Sean O'Malley, the Archbishop of Boston, said the following: "As a bishop and a citizen, I hope and pray we can create a culture that protects the most vulnerable at the beginning of life and at any time life is threatened in any way. I welcome the court's decision, but I do not underestimate how profoundly divisive the issue of abortion has been and will continue to be in our public life. Even more tragic has been the personal suffering of women facing unplanned pregnancies in difficult situations. The Church has consistently opposed the moral and legal dimensions of Roe v. Wade. We must also adamantly reject stigmatizing, criminalizing, judging, or shaming women who have had an abortion." In a recent editorial entitled "For Life Always," the Vatican's editorial director, Andrea Tornielli, called for debate to move away from polarized ideology to a dialogue that takes into account concerns about maternal mortality rates and helping women, especially poor ones, with paid parental leave and other assistance while they bring children into this world. The Catholic Church has a centuries-old heritage of providing assistance to those in need through Catholic orphanages, infant homes, schools, mental health clinics, homeless shelters, dining rooms, hospitals, and nursing homes. These ministries, founded upon charity and justice, are needed critically now, perhaps more than ever, and we must be consistent in the application of our concerns for the sanctity of human life in all situations. We can't just pick and choose the issues on which we will focus our attention. What comes to mind is the late Archbishop of Chicago, Cardinal Joseph Bernardine's image of our moral theology being, quote, "a seamless garment," applying the same moral principles to all questions of life and its sanctity. Too often, perhaps, we are tempted to gravitate to those issues that don't affect us personally and on which we can sit in judgment of others who are struggling with them. We can become like the disciples, James and John, in the gospel we heard just 2 weeks ago, who were with Jesus when he was passing through Samaria, and the residents of the town would not receive him. Eagerly they asked Jesus, "Lord, do you want us to call down fire from heaven to consume them?" And Jesus turned and rebuked them. Not the Samaritans, but his own disciples, who were all too eager to judge and punish those who did not agree with them. Rather than retribution, Jesus in today's gospel teaches us that if we are to be his true followers, the only way we can treat anyone and everyone is with compassion. I can never hear about the topic of abortion without remembering a woman I used to take communion to every first Friday when I was a young priest some 45 years ago. Then she was in her late 80s, and every first Friday when I came to her apartment, she wanted to go to confession. The only thing she wanted to confess month after month for 3 years was the fact that some 70 years before, she had had an abortion. Every month, I would assure her that God forgave her. But the fact was, she could never forgive herself. She carried the pain of that decision with her all her life. The church must be a place where all of us can find an open door, open arms, forgiveness, healing, and welcome. Former pastor and now life coach Chad Thibodeau challenges the church to rise to the issues we faced, armed most of all with compassion, like the Good Samaritan. He writes, "Where is the love and compassion for women? Where is the Christ-like behavior? Where is the emphatic understanding that this decision, even if you agree with it, has placed real fear in the hearts of so many? Church, remember why you exist. It's so you can introduce people to a God who loves and cares for them and give them the unconditional grace that God gave you." Yes, sisters and brothers, we live in very, very difficult and cruel times, times that call us to be the best we can possibly be. As Christians and as members of God's one family, all of us, with no one excluded. It won't be simple or easy, but we must try as hard as we can to do the best we can, to be the best we can. On the road from Jerusalem to Jericho, the first who met the traveler beat him up and left him for dead. The next two ignored him. It was the Good Samaritan who treated him with compassion. We must do the same for all.